If we sell the movie, you get paid. And they're more than willing to do this because of the fact that it gives them experience. It's something to put on their resume. And you never know, what film's going to be the next Blair Witch.
Hello there and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's Rick Nuske here. Hope you're doing wonderfully well. I'm doing wonderfully well because on today's show, I get the pleasure of welcoming author Andrew Robinson to the show. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, thank you once again. Now, you and I are going to be talking about your time travel fantasy adventure series, your unique approach to teen vampire fiction, and your diverse career writing everything from children's books to international screenplays. So certainly a lot for us to talk about. Very excited. But where are you calling in from today?
Well, this is my home in Altamont Springs, Florida, which is just outside of Orlando. So the Central Florida.
Fantastic. Look, this is the
part.
part.
Close to Disney.
Oh, look, having been there, I love that. I could spend weeks there on end, I think. But has that been home for you forever? Have you moved around during your life?
No. I'm born and raised in Arlington, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. Boston. We'd say.
So where you are now, you touched on Disney, but what other landmarks and things that you enjoy doing there?
Well, very much enjoy going to the beach. Love to swim, love to sail. Those are kind of my biggies. When we first moved to Florida, my parents, we were living down in an area called Venice, Florida. It's in Southwest Florida.
Yep.
And my father, he was absolutely insistent, had to be within sight of water. That was. I mean, he had 5 sons and 1 daughter. His boat.
I love it. Now, you talked about swimming. You seem to me like you like looking after yourself. How important is that for you?
Oh, it's a big part. I mean, now that I'm in the Central Florida, it's a little harder to get over to the coast. But we live in a community that has a swimming pool, and so love to make use of that. Get out there and exercise and get in the water. And when I was a kid, we spent summers on Martha's Vineyard Island. We had a little cottage there. This was back in the 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to watch the movie Jaws being made, in fact.
I was going to ask you about that. That must have been very nearby. What a film.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Watch the whole thing. All those scenes where they're on the Orca and they're supposed to be miles from land, way out in the middle of the ocean.
Yes.
They were about 100 yards off of State Beach.
No way.
Where all the beach scenes were shot, and the bridge, they call it the Jaws Bridge now.
Yep.
Back then, we called it Second Bridge, and we used to jump from it.
Now, correct.
But yeah, we stood there on the beach and just watched the boat, the Orca, go back and forth and back and forth, day after day.
I love it. It seems to me that you've got a Jaws poster behind you. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's true. It's right back there. My brother David, he's a big into movie memorabilia. Got that for me back when the film first came out. So I framed it and keep it hung on my wall.
You want to keep that one, that's for sure and certain. Now, you talked about childhood memories, but during your time as life has gone by, who have you met along the way that maybe have influenced your decision to become a writer? Has there been any influential people?
Well, I wouldn't say that they're people I've met. It's more people I probably either heard about, read about. For example, when I was reading the works of Rowling, the Harry Potter books, and enjoyed them immensely. My daughter, oh my God, she just devoured those, and I enjoyed them very much. But I looked at those and thought to myself, geez, you know what? I mean, yeah, Hermione is a strong character, but she's not a very proactive character. She's the one who's saying, don't go in the woods and don't do this and don't do that.
The pessimist.
Yeah. And I'm like, why can't she be more forceful? So that inspired me to write my first children's book. And it was called Lexa and the Gordian Maze of Terra. And that was published back in, I think, about 2007. From a company called Ameripress. Sadly, they've gone out of business since then, and so the rights have reverted to me, and I'm looking for another publisher. But they published the first 2 books in the series, and so that was wonderful for me. And it was, again, this girl named Lexa, derived from my daughter's name, Alexa.
Fantastic.
In fact, all the names in the first book were all derived from family names. So, Greg became Greg, and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
And but it's a sci-fi action story. I call it a kind of a cross between Wizard of Oz and Star Wars, because it's this little girl going on a journey, and all she wants to do is get home. and she's constantly being thwarted by, well, the circumstances around her. And
it's
and it's set in the distant future, and so I was able to have fun with kind of their take on our era, history, where the things have gotten a little twisted over time. So little touch of Douglas Adams in there,
I love it.
so the adults would have funny stuff to read.
You know what? As soon as you started talking about your books, you lit up like a candle. It was just amazing. This is clearly something you're very passionate about. Now, there'll be a lot of aspiring authors on the show. There always is. I've got a very special place in my heart as an author myself. And I think to myself, what does your day look like? And when do you get that, that inspiration, let's call it, to pick up the pen or start striking that keyboard to get some words on the paper?
Well, in my case, I guess I could say I'm kind of lucky in that I'm on what they now call the neurodivergent spectrum. Back in the day, you just said you had autism.
Yep.
And I actually discovered this when I was an adult. I had been diagnosed as a child, but my father refused any sort of therapy or treatment or anything, because he was like, I'm not going to have the neighbors find out, the disgrace to the family type thing. This was the 60s.
Yeah, of course.
This was the 60s, and the minute you said anything like that, it's like retarded, mentally deficient, special ed. It's like, no, it wasn't the case.
We've come a long way.
But yes, we have. But what it has helped me is that, I'm able to juggle an awful lot of balls in the air at one time. And I can be sitting at my computer at work and get some idea about a story, or maybe a plot point, or a character, or dialogue, and just zip, write it down, or even nowadays with my phone, most phones, they have the little notepad feature. Yep. I just ding, 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 or just speak into the speaker. On chapter 3 of the Vampire Academia, add this point. Boom. And I email that note to myself, and I'm done.
Yeah, I love it.
And I have friends in the writing community here. They're like, how can you do that? When I'm writing, I have to sit down. I have to clear my mind and focus. And, I have to have several hours to just devote to that. And it's like, no, it's just the way my brain's wired. It's like, I can jump from, civil engineering. I'm designing a residential development of 300 lots. And then, here's a great idea for what happens to Rosemary in chapter 7.
So I wonder, where do you get your inspiration from? You touched on a couple of movies before, but you've talked about family, you've talked about movies. Do you get inspiration from your local environment?
Well, yeah, from all types of areas. I started working on outlining a children's book. It's called Sarah Bloodspurt, the Backwards Vampire. And I got the idea, the inspiration came to me from seeing a movie where there was this little boy standing in a field, and he was had his eyes closed and his head up, and he was soaking up the sun. And it was just, you could see he was just enjoying it. And it suddenly flashed into my head, what if he smiled and you saw fangs?
Oh.
It'd be like, a vampire out in the sun? That doesn't make sense.
Perfect.
That was the start of that story.
I love it.
On the other hand, I saw the movie Coraline, based on the children's book. Very delightful stop motion movie. But watching it, I thought to myself, geez, why does the Bedlam, the other mother, why does she let Coraline get away? That doesn't make sense to me. What if she had a reason to let her go? Bing, story idea. And out of that grew another children's book I wrote called Dragon Speak. Drew, the boy who talked to dragons, and wrote that one. And again, and at that one, actually, I submitted it to a local literary contest, Royal Palm Literary Award, and came in second.
Wow.
The year it was submitted, and yet still haven't gotten a publisher for it.
You will for sure and certain. I wonder, I always think about, we grow up and we become adults, we act like adults. It seems to me like it would be a strong release, I guess, a return to childhood for you when you're writing. Is that the sort of sensation that you get from telling people stories?
Yes. Well, in particular with some of these stories, like in the case of Dragon Speak, I mean, I drew on a lot of events from my own childhood to incorporate into the story, and then just kind of like, well, I went off and I did this, but the character Drew in the book, well, he's going to go off and do the exact same thing, and then he's going to meet Captain Paul, the submarine commander. A little different. It's like back on Martha's Vineyard, when I was a kid, the Navy used to send one of their submarines over for the 4th of July, and you could go take tours of it. So long before 9/11. And they called it the Yellow Submarine. And I always wondered as a little kid, why is it painted yellow? But we would go out and we could tour the submarine. So when I was writing Dragonspeak, I thought of, let's see, Drew is water walking across the Sea of Tears. So what should he encounter? And I thought of the submarine.
I love how you're linking it all together. It's so fantastic. You've talked about Dragonspeak. Andrew, let's talk about what inspired you to write the time travel fantasy series that was similar to Outlander.
Yes, well, it was actually I had never heard of Outlander, but I saw I got on my television, we had a free season of some cable service that had Outlander on it. And so I watched it. I was curious about it. And while I enjoyed it, once again, the writer in me, I'm like, well, wait a minute. That time travel mechanism doesn't make sense to me. She goes to this circle, like, a little kind of mini Stonehenge in Scotland, and she touches a stone and boom, she goes back in time. That doesn't make sense. Now, of course, I hadn't read the books. So later I learned, it's a little more complicated than that. The TV show, they kind of, strip it down. You're getting the Cliff Notes, version, you might say. And then the other thing was that in the season that I watched, the two main characters, their big goal is to try and prevent the Jacobite rebellion. Now, I'll be honest, I'm quite the historian, but I had no clue what they were talking about. I had to go online and research this, and I was like, Bonnie Prince Charlie, the clans, okay, now I understand. And so as I'm watching these episodes, I realized, geez, guys, you're doing this all wrong. You're putting so much emphasis on them trying to prevent this rebellion, and they're going to fail. We know they're going to fail. When you're faced with a situation like that, you don't focus on the key event. It's like the example I love to give is the book and movie The Day of the Jackal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're not familiar with that, the story is an assassin going to kill President de Gaulle of France. Well, when the book and the movie came out, he was very much alive. So the audience goes in knowing the assassin's not going to do it. He's going to fail,
Yeah.
So yet the book and the movie are both incredibly compelling.
Yep.
Why? Because they focus on the cat and mouse game between the assassin and the authorities. The assassination attempt, they say that's literally the last chapter. Oh, sorry about that. It's my clock.
That's all right. No.
So, and by then you're so invested in the story. I mean, geez, I've seen the movie half a dozen times. Every time it gets to that ending, I'm on the edge of my seat. Is he going to do it? And I'm like, wait a minute.
You already know.
I know the outcome. I'm getting so, involved in the story, immersed in it, that I'm there.
Yeah,
and that's how you do it. See?
That's how you write stories.
Yeah. So I got the idea. What about? Okay, well, for one thing, a better time travel mechanism. So like on the noon, on the summer solstice, the sunlight comes through and illuminates this crystal and they're thrown back in time. Okay, there we go. Now we know, well, they're stuck for a year. So that's established. And then I thought about like some sort of historical event. And I thought, okay, what if I make up a historical event, something totally fictional? Well, then I can have them interact with it however I want them to. And it's not gonna, and then the reader is like not gonna know. Oh, Jesus, are they gonna succeed? Or they not? Maybe they're gonna partially succeed. What? And so I started doing some research. And initially, I was planning this would take place in somewhere on Cape Cod, maybe a fictional island. Well, as it turned out, I had a whole stack of books about the history of Martha's Vineyard Island. My oldest brother Stephen, had given them to me as a birthday present many years ago. excuse me, and I started flipping through them. And I was like, wow, that happened on Martha's Vineyard? And that? Whoa, and the women did what? I'm like, holy Toledo, I don't need to pick a fictional place, and I don't have to pick fictional events. I'm just going to drop my characters into these
wow.
things that really happened, and the story's going to write itself, for Pete's sakes. I mean, this is...
Yeah, look,
so I started writing.
Do you find that you write better in the AM or PM?
For me, definitely the PM.
Right.
Early this time of night. I mean, it's 7 o'clock, as you may have learned.
Yes.
From, but the early evening is a very good start for me, and then usually I kind of slow down, and then I get my second wind. Boy, especially on weekends, midnight will roll around, and I'm banging on those keyboards, and then I'm just flying through this. Through my material. And,
yes. Wow. I love it when you get
on
that.
Then it's like after a while, I just crash.
You just got to go to bed. Now, with your series Worst Date, Greatest, how does that series Worst Date, Greatest Adventure differ from other time travel romances that you've experienced?
Well, I will say that there's probably less focus on the romance. I mean, I'm really not a romance writer, I'll be honest. I've tried to incorporate more of more action and adventure, and also more immersion into the colonial America of Martha's Vineyard, of that era.
Yeah.
I mean, I researched very heavily, like, the communities, the towns that existed, the social structure. I mean, even the slang they used, and made the decision. For example, I threw in this. At one point, the main characters, Arthur and Hazel, they're the time travelers. They happen upon the citizens of Edgartown. They're about to whip a thief, and it's a little 8-year-old girl, a orphan. So of course she's an orphan. So that means, and there's no social services, no orphanage, nothing like that. She's totally on her own, and Hazel, of course, is livid. Oh my goodness, she's ready to just tear these people a new one. How dare you do this to this child? Whereas they're like, well, of course we're going to do this. You have to punish the evildoers. Duh. And Arthur warns her. It's like, you gotta be careful what you say. And so Hazel, she's a fast thinker. That's one of her chief virtues there. So she butters them up. Very big compliment, and manages to convince them to resolve the issue non-violently, at least initially. But there are still some in the community that are like, no, this no good child is a problem, get rid of her, type thing. And that's when Arthur steps up and says, oh, well, we'll take her in. And so she becomes their indentured servant, which again, in that era was perfectly reasonable.
Yep.
And they take her home, and so now here's a new character with new interactions and contributions to the storyline. And then still later, they capture this little boy, and when I tell you about it, you'll definitely understand where this was inspired from. Who's again an orphan. He just lives out in the wild and is considered the lost one. And they put out food for him once in a while, but no one dares go near him. And Hazel finally captures him. I mean, he's practically feral, and realizes he's autistic. And of course, again, in that era, oh my God, they had no concept of this. As far as they were concerned, he was, possessed. He had demons in him or something. Needed an exorcism. Power of Christ compels you, type thing. And she's able.
It's such a wonderful thing. It's such a wonderful thing that we've grown and matured in this respect. But continue on, please.
Yeah, and so she's able to draw him out of his shell and realizes, well, actually, he's quite intelligent. I mean, and so she finally convinces the local school teacher to allow him to come to class. And they have some bumps along the way. He has this tendency to hug all the children and pick them up, and it's like he's just trying to be affectionate. Well, I'll talk to him.
I know that you're working on a third book now. Where does the story go next?
Well, with the first book, Is this that introduced Arthur and Hazel going back in time. They're on Martha's Vineyard, and it culminates finally with Arthur going on a whale hunt, which again, to us, oh my God, how would you even think of doing such a thing? In that era, that was one of their big moneymakers, whale oil, whale products. You needed that, Of course they're going to harvest the bounty of nature type thing, Don't think anything of it. He goes on a whale hunt and the ship he's on sinks in a storm. And he survives. He ends up on one of what we call one of the Elizabeth Islands. It's a string of islands near Martha's Vineyard, but he's presumed dead.
Oh.
So now Hazel is a widow woman, 25 years old, young, healthy,
yes,
on an island where the men outnumber the women about 20-1 at this time period. And so she's facing a real dilemma of, she's got suitors coming after her.
Left, right, and center.
Yeah, and so that's how book 2 kicks off. Her having the funeral ceremony, and then we see Arthur on this little island trying to figure out, can I cobble together a raft and then get out of here. Meanwhile, Hazel, she's being bombarded with marriage proposals.
What a way to start.
Yeah.
No, look,
so
certainly you don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much. That's for sure and certain. But you emphasise that that vampire academia is not like Twilight in your write-up. I'm wondering what makes your take on teen vampires different. Do you think?
Well, there's a couple factors there. Number one, as I say, it's not a romance; it's more of an action adventure.
Yep.
The main character, Rosemary, she's kidnapped by members of the Anti-Vamp League and held for ransom, and ultimately she rescues herself.
Yeah.
Again, proactive type character. The other thing is, I took inspiration again from a movie. I believe it was called like Daybreak or Daybreakers. I'm not sure, but in the movie, it presented a world where pretty much 90% of the world's population have become vampires due to a virus. So vampirism is treated as a medical condition, not some curse or spell or whatever, And so these people, they get up at sunset and they drive to work and they stop at Starbucks to get their coffee, but it has to have blood in it for them to be able to digest it.
Of course.
And so, and other than that, they go to their jobs, and the remaining human population is hunted because, well, the vampires need their blood. They're going to starve to death without them, And I thought it was, again, interesting movie, interesting concept, but the classic, I think I can do better. So in my story, it's like, yes, this virus appears, the people start becoming vampires, government tries to suppress it, and then there are YouTube videos that people say are fake, and and then there are break-ins at blood banks and things like that, and then you've got the ultra conservatives, oh, these are godless monsters, they're soulless and they're eating our children, and then you have the ultra liberals, hey man, come on, live and let live. They're just trying to get by, dude, nothing really to stress about it, and then you have, of course, the worshipers, like, oh, these vampires, they're demigods, they live forever, and again, the more reasonable scientific community of, no, these are people that are suffering a disease, people, let's
deal with it,
and they become the new minority.
That's very interesting.
In my story, Rosemary, she's 16 and she goes behind her parents' back to get turned, as the term goes, becoming a vampire. And her father ships her off to this private academy that claims that they can cure vamps. Make your teenager normal again. We know how to do it. And of course, you can see where there's, that carries a certain subtext to it. And so in the story, and she makes friends there at this academy. One of them is the son of the president, and he's a vamp. And the son is the son is a vampire. And as the story unfolds, you learn that, well, his father had him turned because he was dying of some, as he puts it, one of these long 10-syllable diseases. And the thing about vampirism is that it cures other diseases. So he did it to save his life, but he has to condemn his son to be a vampire.
That's a consequence.
Yeah. And so then, as I say, Rosemary gets captured and spirited away by the anti-vamp league. And then you have the authorities trying to find her, and you have her friends at school being like, wait a minute, they say she left. We don't buy it. They're hiding something, you know. And so they start investigating on their own. And, you know, it culminates with the authorities and the kids kind of following different leads and ending up in, you know, essentially the same place, just as Rosemary, as I say, rescues herself. And
I tell you, there's lots of what I take from your storytelling is there's lots and lots of layers. And I know that we opened up the conversation, Andrew, talking about publishers and that. But tell us about your upcoming murder mystery with the London-based publisher. Is that still a thing? Is that happening?
yes, that was actually the very first novel I ever wrote.
Right.
Originally was called The Prime Suspect, and
Right.
I found out, well, there's a whole bunch of books that already have that title, so I changed it to Murder on Gosnold Island, because I figured, now there's a unique title. And that one grew out of a number of elements. There was, first off, in my work as a civil engineer, I get a lot of trade magazines in my office, you know, and not the sort of stuff that your average person would want to read.
No.
Point of beginning. POB, that's a surveying term. So
Yep.
it's a magazine for surveyors. It's like if you ever have insomnia, read that. It'll put you out in 5 minutes. But as all trade magazines do, they talk about the latest technological developments. Well, back in the mid 90s, the big new thing was, oh, there's this brand new thing called GPS that surveyors are making use of. And we have now a GPS camera. So you take a picture and it stamps onto the film, because this was the pre-digital age, so film, stamps on the film the date, the time, and the GPS coordinates of where this picture was taken. And I looked at that and thought to myself, you could use that in a murder mystery.
Yep.
Surveyor out taking pictures at a site, and in one of the pictures, oh, there's, you know, Archie Andrews, you know, sneaking into his dear uncle's house, who was later found dead, and yet he claims he was, you know, 100 miles away when the murder took place.
Yep.
Proof. Ta-da!
Proximity. You know? There you are.
Yeah. So I thought about, geez, how could I use that, you know, in a story? And then, of all things, here's the weird one. I had a dream about the singer, songwriter, performer Paula Abdul. Nothing dirty, sadly. But in the dream, my family and I, we run into her at Busch Gardens in Tampa, Florida, and she tells us about this new TV movie she's doing. It's one of those Lifetime, you know, or now we would say like Hallmark Channel, you know, romantic comedies.
Yep.
Where she plays a record executive, real stretch, from LA, who comes down to Captiva Island, Florida for a vacation. She stays in this bed and breakfast that's run by this very nice man who's a widower. He's got a couple kids and this invalid wife. And so, of course, they fall in love. But, you know, they're two different worlds. And so that they break up, and she drives off to the airport, and he's sad. And his mother tells him, you know, true love, son. You know, and so he races off to the airport, and she's at the airport, and she changes his mind and races back, and they meet on the causeway that connects the island to the mainland. And, you know, the sun is setting and the music builds, and they profess their love for each other, kiss, you know, fade to black, roll credits.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. I told my wife the dream, and she said, well, what are you going to do? Write a romance? You know, you don't do those. You know, and I thought about it, and I thought, okay, well, let's see what we can do with this. Okay, so she's Paula. I'll keep the first name, but we'll go with some other last name. I'll work that out later. But she's not from LA. She's from New York. And she's not a record executive. She's a homicide detective. And she goes to this little island, Gosnold, for a vacation. And she stays in a bed and breakfast with a man, the kid, you know, all that, to keep that the same. And then a murder takes place, the first in the history of the island. And I got inspired by this because right at that time, there was this news bulletin saying that on Martha's Vineyard Island, they had the first murder take place on the island in its history. You're talking about a community that's had people living on it for like 300 years.
Yeah.
But when you're a tiny little island community, I mean, I used to joke, you know, the banks there, you know, they don't have, the security guards don't have carry guns, the doors aren't locked, because it's like, well,
Why
If
bother?
you drop that, where are you going to go?
And they're
You
going to
know?
know you by your first name. Now,
Yeah,
I know that we could spend hours talking about the depths
yeah.
and angles of all of your books, but I'm really interested to talk about your experiences with screenplays, especially Wickham's Lair that you were involved with back in 2001. What was it like seeing that produced?
Well, that was very exciting because it was a very small micro budget. I mean, a small indie or independent filmmaker.
Yep.
He was actually a co-worker of mine, and he made several little films. I mean, God, literally just one of them he snuck into the office on the weekend and used it for the office set for his romantic comedy. But yeah, he and we got the idea of when we saw what was the Blair Witch Project.
Oh, yes.
And he said, "Serious, do you know that in Oviedo, Florida, they have this legend called the Lights of Oviedo? And, there's supposed to be the spirits out there." And of course, what it really was swamp gases. But, back in the 1800s, people didn't know that. They'd see these, white lights, moving through the swamps. They, oh my goodness, it's ghosts. And
Yep.
he said, "Well, that's a real local legend. Let's build on that. Let's create a story." And da 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 da. And so it's like, so I did some research into like the Wicca, and their belief system and everything, because I wanted the story to follow the beliefs rather than altering the beliefs to fit our story. You
Yeah.
see that way too often in stories. So we built this story, and then we got a producer. It's actually my mother. And advertised. And here in Orlando, let's face it, there is a tremendous just body of actors, writers, producers, production assistants, and a lot of them will take projects like this where it's what they call deferred payment. If we sell the movie, you get paid, but
Yep.
you don't get anything up front. And they're more than willing to do this because of the fact that it gives them experience. It's something to put on their resume, and you never know, what's film's going to be the next Blair Witch, that makes hundred something $1 million.
Yeah, you never know.
So we got just a wonderful cast and crew, and I mean, again, my wife, she made a lot of the special effects. We wanted to have the demon rip somebody open and like eat their heart, and I'm like, well,
As you do.
how are we going to do that? Well, my wife used a red velvet cake mix
I love it.
and shaped it into the shape of a heart, and then at the time for filming, we had a metal bowl next to the body. I played the dead body, and in the bowl was another red velvet cake mix, just the mix.
Yep.
So the actor was able to take the heart, dunk it in that, and then he lifts it up. And from the way that camera was angled, it looked like he was taking it up out of my chest. Here's this heart all dripping with blood, and then he devours it.
Oh, no.
And then for my intestines, we used children's pantyhose and stuffed them with like chickpeas and spaghetti and all kinds of stuff. And then my wife scratched the pantyhose with a utility knife, so that the actor, when he bit it, it would tear, and the intestines exploded with all just the blood.
That sounds like it would have been so much fun. Now, are you still involved with the Florida's Writing Association, and how has that influenced your work, do you think?
Yeah, the Florida Writers Association, FWA. It's a nonprofit group statewide.
Mm-hmm.
I've been with them, God, boy, 20 something years now. I mean, when we started out, boy, our writers conference, we have a writers conference every October. We have a little gift shop bookstore where we would sell the books of the members. And when we started out there, we had like 40 titles. Last time I ran the bookstore, we had like 200 titles.
Oh, wow.
And it's wonderful because it's, number one, there's the networking. You meet people. I'm at the first conference I went to, I met this woman. She worked at Disney, and she told me about, hey, there's this website where they post writing jobs. You ought to check it out. Here's the website address. And so I started checking it out. And one day there was a post there. Amira Press is trying to expand beyond romance and stories into children's literature and sci-fi. If you're an author, go ahead and send us your book. No agent needed. And I said, well, geez, I got the Lexa book. I sent that in. They loved it. They published it.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, and made almost $200 in royalties on that.
Yeah, well, look, what do they say? Small hinges swing big doors. So it sounds like you've had a lot of success in both authorship and screenplays and all those types of things. But what would you say to somebody who is wanting to break into screenplay and writing? What's the first thing you do? Do you find an association?
Well, no, not really. I find a story I want to tell,
Yeah.
and come up with that to start with. And as I say, over the years, like, I mean, a perfect example is, of course, the Lights of Oviedo, which it got renamed Wiccan's Lair because we realized outside of Central Florida, nobody knows how to pronounce Oviedo. They kept calling it. 20th Century Fox rep called it Ovidio.
There you go.
But and it was interesting when we submitted it to them for distribution. They rejected it, but in their rejection letter, they said they called it engrossing and well made.
Oh, there you go.
And I was like, man, that's just about the best rejection letter I think I ever got. I'm keeping that puppy.
Oh, I tell you, as we go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, but working that story, working on that film inspired me to write another horror story. It's called Island of the Lonely Keeper, referring to a lighthouse keeper, because I took everything I learned on producing, very minimal film, simple production quality, minimal special effects, and poured it into this second script whereby the horror is what you don't see. It's all suggested. It's shadows. It's
the
movement.
Inference.
Yes. I mean, like that's what Spielberg did with Jaws, because you may not know that the shark was supposed to make a lot more appearances than it did.
It didn't make many, did it?
Malfunctioning.
Yes, I did read that somewhere recently. That's interesting. Now, in all of that, as we near the sharp end of the call, Andrew, I'd love to know what sort of feelings go through you when you get positive feedback about your books.
Well, it's a tremendous satisfaction. It really is. I mean, I feel like, okay, I've created something that somebody enjoyed, and that means a lot to me.
So, do you think that you've got half a dozen more books in you? Do you think you'll ever stop writing?
I don't know that I have a half dozen, but I have several more. I mean, the romantic time travel one, the
working on
worst
that.
date
Yep.
one. The first two books are out. They're on Amazon. You can find them there, and I'm working on the third. That's supposed to finalize the trilogy there.
Yep.
And then with my other one, actually, I have it here. I don't know how you can see this.
Yes, we can see it.
That's
I love it.
Vampire Academia. There's the cover for it.
Fantastic.
But when the publisher, Champagne Book Group, that's again, if you search them online, you can find their website. My books are on there. But when they published Vampire Academia, the publisher even asked me, "Do you have any ideas for a sequel?" I was like, "Sequel? I hadn't even thought of." About 2 weeks later, I had an outline.
The seed has been planted. Now, with all that being said, if anybody on the show today, Andrew, would like to get access to your books, I'm wondering if you can just share the best place to either connect with you or to directly locate the books once again.
Well, I would definitely say Amazon. Right. If you go on Amazon, they're all available there. Also, some of my books that I self-published, and even the Lexa books. I believe that reprints or used copies are available. Yep. You can find them there, and just Andrew John Robinson. That's the
that's it. That's the moniker. Yes, well.
Yep, and there's certainly, and I always welcome people, particularly potential writers, aspiring writers that want to get in touch with me. I mean, they can
contact me. Yep.
Give out my email address if you like, or through the Florida Writers Association.
Fantastic.
We have a website set up there, and you can certainly contact me through that.
Well, look, anybody's on today's call, if you've enjoyed what we've talked about, or if you're an aspiring author or screenplay writer and you want to get involved, I'll certainly be making sure that we've got links and leads below this post, no matter where you see it, as per normal, one click, and you'll be able to connect with Andrew and all of his wonderful books. And with that, Andrew, great call. Thank you very much for joining me on the show today.
Well, it was a distinct pleasure. And hey, if you ever need another guest slot filled, we can talk about something else.